Welcome back to the deep dive. Think about it for a second. Every email you send, every VoIP call, even just logging into a website securely, it all depends on this huge stack of protocols, doesn't it? Mostly invisible stuff that just makes the internet work. And crucially, keeps it safe, hopefully.
Absolutely. And we've really dug into a pile of sources for this one. It covers, well, pretty much everything from the basic network building blocks right up to today's complex security setups and defense tools.
Right. So our mission here is pretty clear. We want to give you a fast track. We'll map out those key protocols, pinpoint their basic weaknesses, the classic attacks, and then pull together how modern defenses work. The goal is for you to walk away really understanding that hidden structure that keeps the internet running.
Okay, so where do we start? It has to be the foundation, the TCP/IP suite. I mean, that's the bedrock, right?
Yeah.
TCP, UDP for transport, IP for addressing, ARP for finding devices locally. If these aren't solid, nothing built on top really matters.
And what jumped out from the research is how effective simple attacks still are against these basics. We're talking fundamental stuff.
Oh, right, sniffing.
Like sniffing, yeah, just listening in with a protocol analyzer if the data's not encrypted.
Exactly. Or poisoning attacks, messing with cached data. DNS poisoning is the big one there, tricking your computer into going to a fake website.
Yeah, nasty stuff.
And this ties into how core connection processes get hit. Take setting up the TCP three-way handshake. It's designed for reliability. Client sends SYN, server replies SYN ACK, client sends the final ACK. Simple.
Okay, seems solid. So where's the vulnerability?
Well, the sources really hammer on the SYN flood attack. It's quite simple, really. An attacker sends that first SYN packet, but then they just never send the final ACK. They just keep sending SYNs.
Ah, so they initiate lots of connections but never complete them.
Precisely. The server is left hanging, holding resources open for each half-baked connection. Do that fast enough, and bang, you exhaust its memory or connection table. Legitimate users. They can't get in. It's a basic denial of service, exploiting that handshake. And yeah, it definitely still works.
That makes perfect sense. And it really sets up our next point,
Yeah.
this critical shift away from older, inherently insecure protocols. I mean, the whole story of modern network security is moving from plain text to encryption, right?
Absolutely. File transfers may be the clearest example.
Mm.
Old school FTP, all plain text. Your username, password, the file itself totally exposed if someone's sniffing.
Right.
And TFTP, even worse. Plain text and no authentication, just wide open.
Necessary back then, I guess, but just not viable now, so they had to be replaced.
Which is where secure tools like SCP and SFTP come in. They both rely on SSH's strong encryption. SCP is more for basic transfers. XFTP is more advanced, lets you interact with the remote system, create folders, delete files, almost like it's local.
And if you must use FTP for some legacy reason?
Then you wrap it in TLS encryption. That's FTPS. It's a workaround, basically.
Okay, so moving from files to actually logging into systems remotely, SSH is the go-to replacement for Telnet. Telnet was notoriously plain text.
Exactly. SSH gives you that secure, encrypted command line, and the tool set around it, OpenSSH, is indispensable, especially for setting up passwordless logins. This is a neat trick for you to remember. You use /keygen to make your public and private keys.
Right.
Then /copy8 pushes your public key to the server.
Yeah.
After that, secure login, no password needed, just cryptographic proof. Much safer.
And that same idea, encrypting sensitive interactions, applies to directory services too, right? LD app queries for Active Directory info.
Definitely. LDA lets you search those big directories, users, groups, all that sensitive stuff. But standard LDAP is plain text, so you absolutely must use LDAP. That also means it's secured with TLS encryption. You just can't risk exposing that kind of organizational map.
Makes sense. What about real-time stuff, like VoIP calls or video conferencing?
Good question. The actual voice or video data travels using RTP, the real-time transport protocol. But RTP itself isn't encrypted. So to secure it, you need SRTP, secure RTP. It adds encryption, crucially, but also message authentication, integrity checks, and protection against replay attacks where someone tries to reuse old captured traffic.
But something needs to set up the call first, right? Before the voice data flows.
Right. That's SIP, the Session Initiation Protocol. SIP handles the signaling like who's calling who, negotiating capabilities, setting up and tearing down the call. It's a metadata. Then SRTP takes over to encrypt the actual voice or video payload once SIP establishes the session. And yeah, there's SIPS2, which wraps SIP itself in TLS for extra security.
Okay, one quick detour before we move on. Network management, SNMP. The sources pointed out something pretty startling about its history.
Oh yeah, SNMP. Simple network management protocol, used everywhere to monitor device health. But versions 1 and 2, no encryption, 0. Think about that. Detailed network maps, device configurations, potentially sensitive info, all flying across the network in the clear. You absolutely need SNMP version 3 for encryption. It highlights this recurring theme.
Hmm.
Foundational protocols often started insecure.
Which perfectly leads us into email. It's critical, everyone uses it, and boy does it need security. We have the basics. SMTP for sending, POP3 for downloading, IMAP for syncing.
And all of them now have secure versions using TLS, SMTPS, secure POP3, secure IMAP. SMI is the layer people use for end-to-end encryption sometimes.
But the real battleground for email security today, especially against phishing and spoofing, isn't just the transport encryption. It's happening at the DNS level.
Exactly. This is what we call the DNS TXT record trifecta, SPF, DKIM, and DMRs. These are your heavy artillery against impersonation.
Okay, break those down. Start with SPF.
Right, SPF Sender Policy Framework. It's actually pretty simple.
Uh.
An organization publishes a TXT record in their DNS listing all the IP addresses of servers that are authorized to send email for their domain. When your email server receives a message claiming to be from, say, example.com, it looks up the SPF record for example.com and checks if the sending server's IP address is on that authorized list.
So it's a basic check. Is this email coming from a server they said is allowed to send for them?
Pretty much. It's a first line of defense.
Yeah.
But then you have DKIM domain keys, identified mail. This adds cryptographic integrity. The sending mail server takes parts of the email headers, body creates a hash, and then digitally signs that hash using a private key associated with the domain.
Okay.
The public key to verify that signature is published in another DNS TXT record. The receiving server fetches that public key, verifies the signature on the email. This proves two things. One, the email hasn't been tampered with since it was signed. And two, it genuinely originated from a server controlled by that domain owner.
Got it. So SPF verifies the sending server's permission based on IP, while DKIM verifies the message's authenticity and integrity using crypto keys. Much harder to fake that signature.
That's the crucial difference. And then DMRs ties it all together. Domain-based message authentication reporting and conformance. First, DMRC policy usually requires at least one of SPF or DKIM to pass for the email to be considered legitimate.
Okay, let me check.
But the most important part, DMRC tells the receiving server what to do if those SPF and DKIM checks fail. It provides instructions.
Ah, so DMRC is the action plan.
Exactly. The policy might say P-quarantine, stick it in the spam folder, or it might say P-reject or P-drop, just refuse the email outright.
The sources had a great analogy. SPF and DKIM are like showing your ID or business license to prove you're legit. DMRC is the bouncer deciding whether to let you in or throw you out based on that ID check.
That's a perfect way to put it. That policy enforcement is key.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears back to the network hardware itself. Switches.
Right. Layer 2 devices. They learn MSC addresses to figure out where devices are plugged in, build that MSC address table.
Yep. And if a switch gets a frame for a destination, MSC, it doesn't know. It does the only thing it can, floods it out every single port except the one it came in on, hoping the destination device sees it.
Which is a problem if an attacker can exploit that flooding behavior to sniff traffic.
Precisely. That's why switch hardening is so important. Basic stuff like port security disabling ports you aren't using, or limiting the number of empty addresses allowed to talk on a single port. Physical security too, obviously.
And you mentioned flood guards.
Yeah, flood guards are crucial. They limit how much memory a switch dedicates to learning MSC addresses per port, or just limit the number of MS per port. This stops an attacker flooding the switch with bogus source MD addresses trying to fill up its MAC table. Because if that table fills up,
uh-oh, what happens then?
the switch essentially gives up trying to be smart. It runs out of memory, can't store any more MACs, so it reverts to acting like a dumb hub. It enters a fail-open state and just floods all traffic out all ports.
Ouch. So the segmentation the switch normally provides just disappears.
Completely broken. Which brings us neatly to VLAN's virtual local area networks.
The main tool for segmentation at layer 2, right? Grouping devices logically even if they're plugged into the same physical switch.
Exactly. VLANs break up broadcast domains. A broadcast sent in VLAN 10 only goes to devices in VLAN 10. Critically, from a security standpoint, they prevent lateral movement. If someone compromises a server in the web server VLAN, proper VLAN setup should stop them from easily hopping over to, say, the database VLAN or the finance department's VLAN.
Okay, so switches and VLANs handle local segmentation. To connect different VLANs or different networks entirely, you need a router.
Right. Routers work at layer 3 using IP addresses. They stop broadcasts from propagating between networks, and they make decisions on where to forward packets based on their routing tables. And the main tool for controlling what traffic routers allow between networks, That's access control lists, or ACLs.
Rules, basically. A list of permit or deny statements based on things like source and destination IP, port numbers, protocol type.
Exactly. Process top-down. The first rule that matches the traffic determines its fate.
And the golden rule, the one you absolutely cannot forget.
The implicit deny. At the very bottom of every ACL, whether you write it or not, there's a rule that says deny any. If no specific rule explicitly permitted the traffic, it gets dropped, period.
Least privilege for network traffic. Don't allow anything you haven't specifically decided to allow.
That's the principle. And hey, for you listening, if you want a quick peek at how your own computer decides where to send traffic locally, just pop open a command prompt and type route print. It shows your machine's internal routing table. Kind of neat to see.
Good tip. All right, let's step up to the more advanced defense architectures. Firewalls have come a long way.
Oh yeah. We started with basic packet filters, just looking at IPs and ports. Now, stateful firewalls are standard. They operate at layer 4, but crucially, they track the state of connections. They know if a TCP packet is part of an ongoing, established conversation that originated from inside your network. If some random packet arrives trying to hijack a session, the stateful firewall knows it doesn't belong and blocks it.
More context-aware. But then came next-generation firewalls, NGFWs. They go even further, right? Layer 7.
Yep. NGFWs perform deep packet inspection. They actually look inside the data payload, not just the headers. This lets them do application identification, content filtering, URL blocking, intrusion prevention based on signatures. Much smarter.
And then there are WFs, web application firewalls, specifically designed just to protect web servers.
Exactly. WFs sit in front of web apps and look for web-specific attacks like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, things NGFWs might miss. They understand HTTP traffic deeply.
Okay, so when you deploy these powerful security devices, there's a fundamental design choice. What happens if the device itself fails?
Right, the failure mode. Two main choices, really, with opposite priorities. First is fail open. If the security device breaks, it defaults to letting all traffic through. Access and availability are prioritized over security. Think fire doors in a building they must open in an emergency, even if security is temporarily bypassed.
Okay, access wins. What's the alternative?
Fail closed,
Yeah.
or sometimes called fail secure. If the device fails, it blocks all traffic. Security is the absolute priority, even if it means denying legitimate access temporarily. Think about secure door locks on a sensitive facility, or maybe even login systems. If the authentication server fails, nobody gets in until it's fixed. Security holds firm.
That philosophy prioritized security. Assume no inherent trust really drives the modern approach. Zero trust.
Absolutely. Zero trust flips the old model on its head. The old way was trust but verify. If you were inside the network perimeter, you were generally trusted. Zero trust says never trust, always verify. It assumes no location, device, or user is inherently trustworthy, whether they're inside or outside the building.
So every single request has to be authenticated and authorized.
Pretty much. It relies heavily on things like strong multi-factor authentication, MFA, device health checks, granular access policies, maybe digital signatures. The goal is to dramatically shrink the attack surface and prevent attackers, even if they get inside, from moving laterally.
And managing traffic in these highly segmented zero-trust environments often involves proxies, right?
Yeah, proxies act as intermediaries. You've got forward proxies, which sit near the users, acting on their behalf. They're often used for caching web content, filtering URLs, enforcing acceptable use policies. A non-transparent forward proxy might even modify the user's outgoing requests.
Okay, that's client side. What about the other type?
Reverse proxies. These sit in front of your servers, acting on their behalf. Clients connect to the reverse proxy, which then forwards the request to the appropriate backend server. They're fantastic for things like load balancing across multiple web servers, SSL/TLS, encryption offloading, caching, and importantly, acting as a buffer against DDoS attacks.
Makes sense. And looking ahead, security seems to be consolidating. We hear terms like UTM and SASE.
Right. UTM, Unified Threat Management, was an earlier step. It bundles multiple security functions, firewall, antivirus, anti-spam, maybe basic intrusion detection into a single appliance. Simplifies management for smaller organizations, mainly.
But SASE is the newer cloud-focused evolution.
Yes, exactly. SS stands for Secure Access Service Edge. It's a bigger vision. It converges network capabilities like SD-WAN with a whole suite of security functions. Firewall as a service, secure web gateways, cloud access security brokers, CASB, data loss prevention, DLP, zero trust network access. And crucially, it delivers all this as a unified cloud-native service. The idea is consistent, strong security policy applied anywhere, anytime, whether the user is in the office, at home, or on the road. Security follows the user.
Bringing the security edge out to the user, essentially. Okay, one last architectural point. The control plane versus the data plane. Quick distinction.
Sure. Think of it this way. The control plane is the brains of a network device. It handles management, runs routing protocols, builds the forwarding tables, enforces policies. It decides how traffic should be handled. The data plane is the muzzle. It's the part that actually forwards the packets based on the instruction figured out by the control plane. It does the actual work of moving user traffic.
Got it. Brains and brawn. Well, that was quite the journey. We went from those basic, often plain text protocols and their classic vulnerability,
Yeah, SYN floods and sniffing.
all the way up to today's really layered defenses. We covered VLANs for segmentation, smart firewalls like NGFWs that hold DNS trifecta, SPF, DKIM, DMRC for email defense, and this overarching zero-trust philosophy.
It really shows how security isn't just bolted on anymore. It has to be woven into the network's fabric from the start, an ongoing process for sure.
Definitely. But here's a final thought for you to chew on. We talked about how so many early protocols, even for basic things like time sync with NTP, started out unencrypted. Now, the latest standard, IPv6, was designed with IPsec encryption support built-in native compatibility.
Right. Theoretically more secure from the ground up.
Firewalls today are stuck managing complex dual rule sets, one set of rules for old IPv4 traffic, another for new IPv6 traffic, because both are usually running side by side. Our sources even mention some devices might not properly recognize or filter IPv6 traffic at all.
The transition is messy.
So the question is, how long will it realistically take for the industry to ditch those complex dual rules? When will IPv4 finally fade away? And maybe more importantly, as IPv6 does become the default, what new security challenges specific to its structure with that vastly larger address space might pop up, especially if some gear still doesn't handle it correctly? It really makes you think about the long, slow tail of adopting new protocols and the hidden risks legacy systems drag along.